Lead from the Side is made in partnership with Performance Leadership, a co-venture of Western Bulldogs and Victoria University. Hi, I'm Spencer Kassimir, and this is Lead from the Side. Today's guest is Gary Hetherington, CEO of Leeds Rhinos in Leeds, England. He's also the former president of the RFL, board member of Super League Europe, ex-board member of PRL, Premier Rugby Limited, and chairman of Leeds Building Society Foundation, as well as many, many other things. Gary, welcome to the show.
Yes, good to be here.
What's been different? What's been going on over in England in terms of rugby league?
We're going to look back over what's been quite a significant change in the game over the last 3 or 4 years, in actual fact. Constitutionally, the games effectively come together. We did have a period where the Super League effectively broke away from the RFL. We had 2 separate governing bodies and 2 separate organisations. Well, the Super League clubs have come back into the fold in many ways. We've seen the creation of Rugby League commercials, which is a really significant move. This is a company that effectively sits under the RFL, whereby all the game's commercial properties flow into Rugby League commercials. So that's quite a significant move. Roderick Jones is the chief executive of that organisation, or the managing director. And we've also got, very significantly, a new strategic partner in IMG. That's an initial 12-year arrangement where they're coming in, using their expertise and their resources to actually direct our game into where it needs to be going in terms of changes, improve our attendances, broadcast viewership, and our commerciality as well. The game is quite healthy on the pitch. I think the contests are good. The Super League has never been more competitive than it is now. And I think there's a significant opportunity for our game.
What are the biggest differences that you observe being on the English side of the rugby league equation between there and Australia over here?
The game in Australia is really thriving. It's booming, in fact. We get coverage of 3 NRL games on television every week. And I have to say that the NRL has never been more healthier than it appears to be now. And it's noticeable how their crowds and the audiences have increased. And I know their television audiences are very vibrant as well. And of course, our aim and objective in the UK and France is to rival and to match the NRL, to be just as big a competition. Of course, we've got other major sports to contend with, not least football, which in many ways dominates the sporting landscape of the UK. But that's part and parcel of the challenge. So yes, we're full of admiration for what is happening in the NRL, and they are sort of leading from the front.
Association football is such a dominant force globally. But this show is about chatting about leadership and how it manifests in the sports industry. So, Gary, tell me, what's something about being a CEO that others wouldn't know unless they've been in that position?
Yeah, in some respects, it's similar to being a head coach, I reckon, in that you've got a specific objective. Head coaches have got to win games fundamentally. But of course, as we all know, there's much more to it than that. And there's a lot of factors that go into actually developing a winning team. It's the same in business. In my view, there's a lot of similarities between sport and business. And I think we've both got quite a bit to learn from each other. But yes, it's all about, we are in a people business. All our customers, our fans, they don't have to come. We have to encourage them to come. We have to entice them to come. It's not an essential part of their life. It's a decision and a choice that they make. So we are constantly striving to increase our fan base, to bond our fans, to become part and parcel of the club. For that reason, we make them feel very welcome into our organisation. And of course, we've got to manage a business. In our case, at Leeds, it's quite a diverse business. Primarily, we are Leeds Rhinos as a sporting entity. So we're generating match day income, we're generating corporate income, advertising income as well. But we also have a hotel within our stadium. We've got conference and banqueting. We've got a retail operation. So we've got a variety of different income streams. All of them need expertise and dedication and determination. So I think the role of the CEO is a little like the head coach who oversees all his players and indeed his staff, and has got to think through what they're thinking and what they're doing and how they can improve. Pretty much the same for a chief executive. He or she oversees that organisation. And I think it's important that not only do they get the day-to-day qualities of that organisation right and manage to do very efficiently, but they're constantly looking to the future as well. So they've got short-term goals, medium-term, and in terms longer-term goals. Need to be constantly looking at what are you trying to create in the future? Is it realistic? Is it achievable? What do you need to do to actually get there?
Many CEOs say that their greatest strength is to be able to step back and look at the big picture. Do you ever get the chance to do a deep dive yourself as well into, one of the silos that you're passionate about? Or do you like to stay further back and make that holistic decision-making process?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the things I'm keen for is all my staff, particularly the management, to also be visionaries themselves, to not be waiting for a lead from somebody else, but to be creative. And I think the role of the chief executive is to actually encourage people to become creative, to grow the sort of organisation, grow its values, grow its support base, grow its influence within the community. All essential components of an organisation. As a sports brand, we've got a lot of privileges. We're seen on a daily basis. We get huge media coverage, huge social media attention as well. So I think we can put all those to our advantage because we can deliver a strong and powerful message. The sports business is a business, but it's a different business to most others. Our results are sort of posted every week. People take a genuine interest in all the decisions that we make. It's analysed, it's scrutinised, it's often criticised, but it's there. And so we do live in a goldfish bowl existence, but that is the nature of professional sport. And when you don't get those decisions right, your customers, the fans, are very keen to let you know about it as well. So it doesn't go unnoticed, and that's the sort of environment that we live in. But I think people in sport tell you they wouldn't want it any different.
Want to develop your leadership potential this October? Join the Western Bulldogs and Victoria University for Performance Leadership, a 2-day program offering unparalleled insight into leading in dynamic, high-performance environments. Places for the October 5th and 6th intake are limited, so prospective attendees are encouraged to visit education.westernbulldogs.com.au to register interest today. Today, with social media in the landscape of sport, people feel like they're so much closer to the game. What is one of the things that somebody who is passionate about sport would be missing out on unless they were on the sideline and part of an organization?
I think what sport does, it drives ambition, it drives motivation, it drives the sort of emotion of the sport. People want to win and they want to win every week. Running a business, you're looking for growth over a period of time. In sport, a lot of it's instant gratification, really. Everybody's looking to next week. But of course, what the leadership have got to be doing is looking to next week, but looking much beyond it and looking how it can actually get to where it wants to get to, and what is a realistic timescale in doing that, and what are the actions that need to be put in place. The role of the chief exec in many ways is to manage that level of expectation. Everybody wants to win. Every team can't win. Half the teams that play get beat. And that's the nature of sport. And we've got to learn that sometimes you get beat, but you got beat simply because the other team is a bit better than you. Other times it's because you've been unlucky. Whilst week-to-week results are important, the most important factor is the direction of travel that an organisation is going in. And is it getting the component factors right within its organisation to give it their best chance of achieving success in the future? Looking back over our last 20-odd years, of playing the sport, is we know what are the factors that lead to a successful team. So and I think it's fair to say that some clubs who have never been in that position are still learning. They're still trying to find out what indeed are those factors, what do we need to put in place. In many ways, the teams that have been successful and the people that's been involved in that success are at an advantage because they've got a track record and they've got prior knowledge. But of course, there's a lot more needs to be put in place surrounding the organisation to make that happen.
If you had to cook up certain ingredients for those successful things, what would be the major ones that you're looking for within an organization?
Yeah, I think we are a people business. So, we are very dependent on the qualities and abilities of our people. So, all our fans and our sponsors and our staff, we're all people, and we need everybody to be passionate about our organisation and to actually add some value. And a fan can add value by being a fan. That is adding value. Everybody needs to know, as an organisation, what are we striving to achieve? What is the plan to actually achieving that? And what their role within the organisation is, and how their role can actually affect and influence others within the organisation as well. So I think communication is absolutely essential. That goes right through the organisation. And I think the management, the leaders of your organisation have got to be constantly reinforcing that message, being aware of where standards need to improve, and striving for excellence at all time. So all these are day-to-day challenges, but at the end of the day, they form part of a longer-term vision.
We've talked about how Leeds Rhinos have been such a stable entity of success in England for so many years. What do you attribute that to? I mean, there have been ups and downs. How have you pulled yourself out of the downs to get back to the top?
I think, first of all, there's got to be an acceptance. I'm not aware of any sports team in any sport that's got a consistent level of success that lasts for years and years and years. To your question about communication, simplicity is the key. I think a lot of messages you don't quite know what the message is actually trying to deliver. The message needs to be easily understood by everybody. So I think, we at Leeds Rhinos are quite a simple, straightforward organisation. We do communicate, we do sort of explain things and what we're striving to do and how we're actually doing. And openness about your communication is very important. And I think, that's one thing that we at Leeds Rhinos have done pretty well. And I think you would have to ask our members to ask them the question, even though it may not be delivering the actual message that the fan or the sponsor is wanting to hear. That's essentially, if you are dependent on your fans and your sponsors feeling partial of the club, it's important that they're informed about how the club is travelling.
What's your secret to coming out of the doldrums? I mean, the history of the Rhinos has been so successful in Super League, but what's your style of getting out of the pits, as they say?
Well, there's no shortcuts, really. We are in a salary cap sport. So, in other sports, soccer in particular, a club that might be having poor results may well go and change 5 or 6 of its players and buy new ones in. That opportunity doesn't exist in our sport. We've got to spend our money wisely. We can only spend the same as anybody else. So, in theory, we should have a Super League of 12 teams where they're all fairly equal and all the results are unknown every week. Anybody could win the competition, anybody could come bottom. I think it's fair to say that this year's Super League competition, the Betfred Super League, has probably been more competitive than any other competition I can remember. Clearly, injuries take its toll, but if everybody turned their best team out every week, it would be very, very difficult to actually pick the results. In Leeds Rhinos' case, I think we've got certain advantages. We're within a city, so we can draw on a bigger population than some of our competitors. And we've got a fantastic stadium that's been here for 133 years. It provides a very good match day ambience. I think we provide very good match day entertainment. We make it very appealing for fans to come and want to be here. We're very involved in assisting with the development of young players and the participation of young players. We have a foundation, a charitable trust called the Leeds Rhinos Foundation, who do terrific work in the city, particularly in terms of rugby league development. There are 31 community clubs around the city as well. But at the end of the day, you've still got to make the right decisions and have the right staff on board, and the right quality of staff, and the right chemistry within the playing group as well. So there's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of things you've got to get right if you're going to be consistently successful.
So shifting gears, what are the biggest differences that you find in yourself from when you first started being in the leadership capacity as opposed to today?
Yeah, well, I can look back over 40 years, which is a fair stint, isn't it? I've personally changed quite a bit. Initially, I was very much just driven to actually delivering a project. So I'd get an idea and actually look at doing pretty much everything myself, just getting occasional people to play a role within that delivery of that project. Nowadays, just the opposite. I think one of the things I've learned is the art and the value of delegation. You've got to delegate a variety of tasks and initiatives to people who's very capable of delivering them. And that requires a bit of skill, a bit of judgment as well. Can the people who you actually appoint to carry out that task, are they suitably qualified to do it? Are they passionate about it? Do they want to do it? Are they the sort that can achieve success? What I strive to do is to give my management team as much ownership as possible. as much support as possible, as much belief to be creative if required, but to also calculate the possible risks of creativity. The law of unintended consequences, what it may throw up, what you're not expecting. But we're all about, constantly delivering new projects which give back value to the fans, to the stakeholders of the club, and help to grow our business. A lot of them we get right. Some of them we might get partially right occasionally. They might not be right at all. That's the art of judgment in many respects.
What's a good example of one of those tough times that you had to go through as a leader where things just didn't work out, and how did you manage that?
I think you've got to have faith in what your beliefs are. We've had quite a number of occasions where we've had to put our faith in our young players. And in sport, that's a difficult one because from experience that young players are not consistent in their performance, and that too many young players in the team are unlikely to achieve winning results. But if you genuinely believe in the quality of the players that you've got, and you genuinely believe that with experience, and they need to play to gain experience, with that level of experience and quality coaching, that they will come through and be the fulcrum of your team. There's no way around not providing that opportunity and suffering the little bit of pain that comes along the way. It's, when will these players come to fruition? You don't know. There's a lot of judgment calls. You've got to make your best judgment as to when you think it might be. Those are the sort of roles and the responsibilities of the chief exec, of the head coaches especially. And I think when you're making those judgments, you need to know that you've got the full support. In our case, our board of directors and our senior management team, if you're going to be making those judgment calls and leading from the front.
And sometimes we have to have those tough conversations with individuals and people and whatnot. When you have to have that tough chat with somebody, what's your style? How do you like to approach the conversation?
I think just being open and honest and simple. Don't cloud the message with ambiguity. And at the end of the day, I've never had a problem with those tough conversations and making the decisions, because the underlying criteria has to be what is in the best interest of the organisation. And if it is, then that's the justification for making that decision. And I think a lot of managers get wrapped up in personality issues and let emotional issues take sway. So you've got to take the emotion out of the decision-making. It has to be based on primarily performance and judgment going forward and in what's in the best interest of the organisation.
What you've done at your time, not just with Leeds Rhinos, but all these other projects, you were one of the key innovators for Sheffield Eagles. What's your style of innovating? What draws you to it? And when you're innovating with others, how do you motivate others to innovate?
I am an optimist and I'm all about growth and expansion and development. But at the same time, you've got to temper that with realism as well. Is it a realistic chance? And you've got to weigh those factors in as well. And the outcome of that often depends on whether you are a fairly positive person or a fairly negative person. Are you a glass half full or a glass half empty? So I think, there's a variety of sort of judgment calls to be made. But I'm constantly looking for growth. I'm constantly looking for expansion. Constantly looking to get bigger and better for the betterment of, in our case, the club and indeed the game. A bit like a player. A player looks for opportunities. The really good players are looking for opportunities. And then when you spot an opportunity, you've actually got to go for it. You can't procrastinate and wait and dither and think about it too long because the opportunity might disappear. You've actually got to go for it. So it's actually making that judgment call, spotting that opportunity, and then having a plan that says this is where we're going, this is how we're going to get there.
What's a great example in your leadership history of one of the tough times that you had to lead through, and how did you overcome that hurdle?
Well, my toughest times have not been at Leeds. My biggest challenges were previously at Sheffield Eagles, which was just the opposite type of club to Leeds. Leeds have got a rich history, a big potential support base, a terrific facility. Sheffield didn't have any of that. It didn't have any history at all. It didn't have any support base, and it didn't really have a facility. So that was a real challenge in itself. And it didn't have a team. Basically, it wasn't a viable entity either. And the achievements at Sheffield Eagles were done without any external finance. So we could only spend what we earned, and we had to generate as much income as possible and be very creative about generating income as well. And to do that without a successful team was even more challenging. So there were a lot of times when it would have been quite easy to give up and to do something else. But I'm a big believer in stickability. I think it's a great word, is that, stickability. And if you really believe in something and you believe that you can achieve it, then you've got to really stick with it. And you've got to stick with it knowing that there's tough times to be manoeuvred and dealt with, but you just got a positivity about actually coming to at the end. And then when you actually do, then it's so much more rewarding. I can recall a lot of occasions where, to be honest, we didn't have an answer. We had a problem, but we didn't really have an answer. But you've got to create one, because if you don't become creative, then you've lost. And that brings out the best in certain individuals.
We talk a lot about feelings, not just the kids and I, but on the show as well. How did you feel when you were going through the tough times? How did you manage those feelings? What were they? And what did you do to persevere?
I had the benefit of a very supportive wife, recognised in the early days what I wanted to do and what I needed to do to actually make some progress. And Kath couldn't have been more supportive at a time when we got 3 small children as well. So that was very important. And without it, then, probably would have had to make a different decision. You find people that can be very, very supportive, people who you probably least expect to be supportive. By sharing the problem with them and the challenge, it became a shared problem. And the more people you can actually involve in that solution, the better. And especially for people with ability, creativity and connectivity as well. Nowadays at Sheffield, that inspired us to actually becoming quite creative and ultimately quite productive as well.
And we both know that Kath is also quite a leader, not just from that experience, but from her extensive experience in the rugby league and sports industry as well. So one of my favorite questions that I like to end the show on, if you have any good leadership advice that you wish you knew sooner, what would it be?
Leadership is quite a broad description, and there's no right and wrong way. There's no textbook that's going to tell you how to become a good leader, or a textbook that said how your leadership skills will fail. It is very much down to personality, it's down to character, how people do things. It can vary. I'm sure there's been loads and loads of examples where people have done things differently but achieved the same results. There's no necessarily right and wrong way. I think that it's a human characteristic. At the heart of good leadership is a determination and a passion and an enthusiasm and a knowledge in terms of what you're striving to achieve. And then it's been quite coordinated and planned and skilled in terms of identifying who can do what. And so therefore it becomes a real team effort. And it's a rare gift to be able to spot those sort of qualities in individuals. Some people have got that gift, and those that have tend to be quite successful, I reckon.
Very well said. You can follow Gary and Leeds Rhinos at Leeds Rhinos and hashtag Leeds Rhinos on social media platforms. Gary, I'm so happy you're on the show. Thank you for being on Lead From the Side today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening today, and thanks to our sponsors. More information about the show and our guests can be found in the show notes. You can follow the show on Twitter or LinkedIn at Lead From the Side, or myself on Twitter or LinkedIn at BallsOutPhD. If you want to contribute to the show, send us an email at leadfromtheside@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you. See you next time, and remember to lead from the side.